I had fallen to my knees on the floor crying, my hands folded together, begging him. With my head bowed in grief, I kept saying to my brother-in-law, "For God's sake, don't do this to me. This is injustice. This is cruelty. I always saw you as a brother. I wanted you to be like an elder brother to me. Then how can you even think of doing this to me? You've treated me like nothing but a deal, a transaction." Tears streamed endlessly from my eyes, running down my cheeks. But standing in front of me, that merciless-hearted man, my brother-in-law, laughed wickedly as he looked at me with disgust. He said, "Oh my, what do you expect from me? That I should keep you in this house, save money for your dowry, go around looking for proposals for you? That I waste my hard-earned lawful income on sending you off like a princess? Absolutely not. I neither have that kind of money nor that kind of time. I only tolerate this house because of Aaliyah. But if you want to see your sister's marriage survive, then you better quietly do what I'm asking you to do. And if you even think about telling your sister what's going on, believe me, you won't find a worse enemy than me. It won't take me more than 2 minutes to divorce her. Then you both sisters can sit and mourn your ruined lives together." Hearing those words from Kashif's mouth made my entire being tremble. I could suffer silently, accept my fate. But if my elder sister Aaliyah got divorced because of me, it would ruin her completely. She had 2 daughters already, and she was pregnant with their 3rd child. If I told her what her husband had been doing to me, what he now intended to do, it could shatter her emotionally. It could even harm her health. Kashif Bhai had already warned my sister in a threatening tone, "If you don't give birth to a son this time, then you're done with this house." She was already living in fear of him, and if, on top of that, my confession caused her health to deteriorate, then what? This time, she was finally going to give him the news of a son. So I quietly swallowed all my tears, wiped my face, and stood up. With a trembling voice, I said, "I'm ready to do what you're asking." The very next moment, Kashif stepped forward and placed his hand on my cheek. He patted it and said, "Yes, that's exactly what I expected from you. You still have one more option. If you want, I can save you." The filth in his tone, I could feel it clearly. My entire body shuddered. In utter helplessness, I looked at Kashif Bhai and immediately walked into the next room, closed the door behind me. I sat down with my head resting on my knees and wept. I kept thinking, where else will fate drag me? How many more corners of this world will I be shattered in? After our parents passed away, I had been living with my elder sister. I was just 13 years old when she brought me into her home. I had stepped into the threshold of youth, but still had no understanding of right and wrong. From the very beginning, I had seen my brother-in-law treat my sister poorly. He would constantly scold her, snap at her over everything. After our parents died, he started asserting even more control, treating her like an orphan without value. As soon as I completed my 10th grade, he made me quit school. He said, "There's no need for college. I'm not spending on your education. Sit at home and learn sewing and embroidery. That's all girls need to know." I had quietly accepted everything he said. I kept my head down and obeyed. Yes, if my father had been alive, I would have insisted. I would have said, "No, I want to study further. I want to become something. I want to escape this poverty." But in front of him, that was impossible. Time kept moving forward. One day, I had just come out after taking a bath. It was winter. My hair was open and wet, and I sat in the sunlight to dry them. While soaking in the sun, I began combing my hair. I didn't have my dupatta around my neck at that moment. That's when Kashif Bhai came out from inside. Those days, my sister was in her 2nd month of pregnancy and spent most of her time sleeping in her room. I had taken up all the responsibilities of the house. I was completely lost in my thoughts, brushing my hair, when I suddenly felt someone's gaze burning into my skin. It felt like someone was staring at me, intensely. I could feel his eyes passing through every inch of my body. Startled, I turned around, only to find Kashif Bhai standing there, staring at me with a strange, hungry look in his eyes. I instantly wrapped my dupatta around myself and said, "Kashif Bhai, you're awake? Should I prepare breakfast for you?" He smiled. What shocked me was, he had never smiled at me before. Never, not even once. Why today? What had changed? He replied, "Yes, make me some strong tea." Then, stretching lazily, he came and sat down, right there, on the same charpai where I was sitting. That had never happened before. He sat very close to me. And then, almost casually, he placed his hand on my thigh. The moment his hand touched me, I felt a jolt, like an electric shock, and stood up immediately. Maybe a woman's sixth sense is extremely sharp. She always knows when a relationship begins to change its intentions. That's exactly what happened then. I kept thinking, why? Why had Kashif Pai's tone changed? Why had his behavior shifted like this all of a sudden? Before this, he used to scold me all the time. I went into the kitchen to make breakfast for him, and he followed me there. First, he started fiddling with the dishes, making noise, then came and stood right next to me. He placed his hand on my shoulder. I turned into a statue of ice. Bringing his face close to mine, he said, "You work so hard, don't you? You're the one holding this entire house together. Your sister, she just lies in bed all day doing nothing, right?" With trembling hands, I placed a paratha on the pan and replied softly, "No, Kashif Pai, it's not like that. She's just unwell right now. She's going through a difficult phase. Normally, she does everything herself." My lips were quivering. Kashif Pai kept looking at me closely. Then he said, "You know, you're not as bad as I've treated you. You're actually very beautiful. So soft. So delicate. Wouldn't it be nice if you and I became close friends? Your sister doesn't know anything anyway. She just lies in bed all day. If you become friends with me, I'll take you out, let you enjoy life. And if you want, I'll even help you get admission into college. But for all that, you need to change your attitude toward me." His tone shocked me. My mind was sending warning signals, but my heart refused to accept what was happening. This was completely unexpected. I immediately stepped back and said, "What kind of tone are you using with me? What are you even trying to say?" As soon as I raised my voice, he suddenly yelled and exploded. "Why are you raising your voice at me? Don't you have any shame, no manners? I'm your brother-in-law. Lower your voice when you speak to me or I'll throw you out of this house in seconds." Like a shameless man, his tone had turned filthy and threatening in an instant. I looked at his face in utter shock. What was he saying? What did he really want from me? After that day, whenever I had to face Kashif Pai, I made sure to wear my dupatta properly, fully covered. I would try to finish all the housework before he came home, or at least ensure that Ali Abaji was always nearby. I was 17 years old at the time. One night, a heavy rainstorm came, thunder, wind, and power outage. Even the slightest rain would often cause load shedding. The whole house was drowned in darkness. I had always been afraid of the dark since childhood. Once I got sleepy, I left my sister's room and went into my own room. I lit a candle and carefully closed all the doors and windows, then laid down to sleep. Some time passed, and then I heard footsteps outside my door, but the loud thunder and the crashing lightning buried that sound into silence. Later, as I tried to turn in bed and opened my eyes, the room was pitch dark. The candle had gone out. Before I could even move, I felt someone's hand on my neck. A scream escaped my throat. As I tried to sit up, the next moment someone grabbed my neck tightly. I thought I was going to die. It felt like death had come for me. Before I could say anything, I heard a voice whispering near my ear, "Shut up, you little brat. One more scream and I'll... What are you putting on this drama for?" My whole body froze. My skin crawled. My hair stood on end. It was Kashif Pai. What was he doing in my room in the middle of the night? Why was he touching me like that? Every suspicion I'd ever had turned into terrifying reality. Just then, my sister rushed into the room. She must have heard my scream. She said, "Namra, what happened? Why did you scream? Is everything okay?" Before I could even respond, my brother-in-law had already lit a candle and scolded me into silence. He said, "Why did you come here?" I had already come. I came just to check on her. Poor thing must have gotten scared because of the darkness, right? My sister said, "Come on, I'll sleep in your room with you. You really haven't changed, Namra. You're grown up now, but still afraid of the dark." By then, my brother-in-law had already left the room. I was terrified, trembling, and fell asleep in my sister's arms. That night's moments kept flashing in my mind. Now, even in my own sister's house, my honor no longer felt safe. After that night, I began to completely avoid Kashif Pai. Seeing me pulling away, my sister eventually asked, "You don't talk to Kashif like you used to. Did something happen? Did he say something to you?" I shook my head and said, "No, nothing like that. You just take care of your health." We were still talking when suddenly my brother-in-law entered the house. He looked visibly anxious. He sat down, holding his head in his hands. My sister asked him what had happened. He said, "I had taken a 2 million rupee loan for the fabric shop, Shamat, but neither did the shop work out, nor have I recovered any of the money. The landlord keeps demanding his money back again and again, and now I've got nothing left. There's nothing I can give him to settle this." That truly was a troubling situation. 2 years ago, Kashif Bhai had started a clothing shop. In the beginning, it did really well. But the moment profits started rolling in, instead of saving or reinvesting in fabric, Kashif Bhai began blowing it all on his own luxuries. One day he'd bring chicken, the next day mutton. He'd host feasts for his friends almost daily. And when my sister tried to stop him, he'd scold her too. Eventually, everything collapsed. And today, he was completely empty-handed. The only thing left with my sister now was her jewelry. She gave that jewelry to Kashif Bhai, but instead of appreciating it, he snapped at her and said, "What am I supposed to do with these light little earrings and this wire-thin ring? This won't even get me 1 lakh, and I'm talking about 20 lakhs. That evening, the landlord was supposed to come to our house to talk to Kashif Bhai. He brought home groceries and said, "I want dinner ready by tonight. Everything should be perfect and on time." I tied my dupatta around my waist and got busy preparing dinner in the kitchen. I had just put the rice on steam, and turned around when someone knocked at the door. My brother-in-law ran to open it. I stood behind the kitchen door watching from the corner, curious, though I didn't know why. Maybe it was because I had seen so many films, dramas, and read so many stories about landlords, jagirdars. In my mind, I had imagined someone about 25, 30 years old, wearing a white kurta shalwar, a shawl draped over his shoulder, entering the house with power and presence. And of course, falling in love with the food I had cooked, becoming instantly obsessed. Then the usual scenes played out in my mind, the kind you always see in films and novels. But the very next moment, I felt embarrassed by my own thoughts. What was I even thinking? Astaghfirullah, I should be praying for Kashif Bhai's debt to be forgiven, not indulging in such silly fantasies. Still, I stood behind the door, watching with growing curiosity. The landlord entered. Kashif Bhai was bending over in front of him, almost laying his eyelashes at the man's feet. But this was no young prince. He looked to be around 40 years old, yet he was strikingly handsome. His face radiated pride and arrogance, but he walked with a limp and carried a crutch in his other hand. The moment I saw that, all my daydreams vanished into thin air. Seeing all this, I half-heartedly prepared the raita. From the drawing room, I could constantly hear the voices of the landlord and my brother-in-law. After a while, Kashif Bhai called out, "Bring the food!" I hesitated and replied, "How can I go in front of him? You serve the food yourself." But the very next moment, he snapped at me. "Why? Are your feet dyed with henna that you can't walk? Just shut up and go set the food in the guest room. I can't send the landlord away without feeding him." I turned red with shame. Wrapping myself tightly in a large shawl, I went into the drawing room and started setting the food. I didn't look up at the landlord even once. But I could feel his eyes burning into me, as if he was staring at me intently. As I turned to leave the room after setting the dishes, the landlord suddenly stopped me. He said, "Kashif, who is this girl to you? Your sister?" Kashif smirked and replied, "Just think of her as a sister, landlord sahib. But actually, she's my sister-in-law. I've raised her like a sister since the beginning." Reluctantly, I lifted my gaze and looked at the landlord. That demonic smile spread across his face. For the first time, I felt like he was going to devour me alive. I quickly ran out of the room. My breath caught in my throat. My chest tightened with anxiety. I didn't know why. But disturbing thoughts and dark suspicions began creeping into my mind. After dinner, I don't know what the landlord said to Kashif Bhai, but he came back looking pleased. Then Kashif Bhai gave me the news. He said, "He'll forgive the 20 lakhs, but only if I marry you off to him." And in a cold, commanding tone, he added, "Tomorrow night is your nikah with the landlord. You'll go quietly. And don't even think about causing any fuss. Or else..." I stood there, a statue of helplessness. I wanted to be freed from Kashif Bhai too, because his boldness and vulgarities were increasing day by day. And now this landlord, whose face exuded power and arrogance, and on top of that, he limped on one leg. I had spent the entire night crying. By morning, I don't know how Kashif Bhai explained the marriage to my sister, but she seemed happy. With a smile, she said, "Wow, your luck has really turned around. You're so fortunate that the landlord liked you. Even though he's older than you, landlords always marry younger girls, and they treat them really well." My sister tried to comfort me, and I, silent, broken, just nodded along. Somewhere deep inside, I knew my sister was also relieved. At least now she wouldn't have to arrange dowry for me. The landlord had refused to accept any dowry, but inside my conscience was tearing me apart. For 20 lakh rupees, my own brother-in-law had sold me off to this landlord. The nikah was done secretly, late at night, around 10 p.m. Dressed in a red bridal outfit, I sat there like a living corpse. The landlord kept twisting his mustache and looking at me repeatedly, and I just wanted to go and claw his face off. Hatred had filled every vein in me. After the nikah, when it was time for me to leave with him, Kashif Bhai stepped forward to place his hand on my head. Right in front of everyone, I slapped his hand away, and I said, "I would rather die than ever set foot in your house again. You did wrong by me. I can't even curse you because you are my sister's husband. If something happens to you, my sister and her children will suffer." And with that, I left with the landlord. I had escaped one swamp, but the thought of what awaited me next was enough to drain the life out of me. As soon as the car stopped, I saw a massive Haveli, mansion. Dozens of young men stood outside, armed, weapons in hand. The grandeur of that Haveli left my eyes wide open in shock. He walked ahead of me with the support of his crutch, and I followed him step by step. Suddenly, I noticed two women standing to the side. I thought maybe they were his sisters, but the way they stared at me, cold, sharp, I instantly grew anxious. One of them, an older woman with almost entirely white hair, clapped her hands and said mockingly, "Wow, Landlord Umar Hayat Sahib. Truly impressive. 2 wives weren't enough for you, so now you've brought home a third? Aren't you ashamed? Your own daughter is older than this girl. You married someone so young, how disgusting." My vision darkened. These 2 women, they were his wives, my co-wives. My feet froze to the ground. Then the landlord laughed and said, "I'm a man. I have the right to keep 4, and if I want, I'll bring home 10. Why does it bother you? Take your old, sagging body and disappear from my sight. If you had kept yourself the way I like, I wouldn't have looked elsewhere. Now go vanish. It's my wedding night. Don't ruin my mood with your face." I stood there, panicked and stunned, in a corner. The landlord led me to his room. I had thought maybe he was disabled, he limped. Perhaps he only wanted to keep me as a servant in his house, but I had no idea. This man truly considered me his wife, and he fully intended to treat me like one. I sat on the bed, petrified. He walked slowly toward me. Then, without a word, he opened a drawer, took out a cigarette, lit it, and began to take slow drags from it. I sat there, terrified, my head covered with a heavy bridal veil. When he blew cigarette smoke toward my face, my breath caught in my throat. I started coughing. In one abrupt motion, he snatched off my veil. His eyes scanned my body with a hunger that felt centuries old, as if he hadn't eaten in years. Seeing the tears in my eyes, he said coldly, "Why are you crying? You're ruining my night by decorating your face with these useless tears. I forgave 20 lakh for you. Delicate girls like you bring peace to my soul. Now shut up and do exactly as I say, or I can treat you very badly." I sat, trembling, my eyes fixed on a corner of the room. Tears welled up, but I tried to stay still. Nervously, I whispered, "Please, I'll spend my entire life in your house as a maid. Let me repay your 20 lakh by working for you, freely. But please, please don't destroy my life. For God's sake, have mercy." But even those desperate pleas couldn't soften that man. And then, he claimed full control. He gripped me with violence and unleashed his cruelty without restraint. He didn't just shatter my body, he tore through my soul. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't scream for help. All night long, he continued to abuse me. I cried, begged, whimpered. And yet I obeyed everything he demanded. By the end, I was no longer a human being. I was a shell. I lay on the bed with closed eyes thinking, how am I still alive after the brutality of this man? And then he kicked me off the bed with his foot. This is what you're worth, he growled. Whenever I want you in my bed, I'll call you. Otherwise, you're nothing but a two-penny girl who will sit here like a pet. He humiliated me. In every way a person can be humiliated. And I cried without a sound, silently enduring every insult, every humiliation. If only I had never come to my brother-in-law's house. Or better yet, if only I had died with my parents during that tragedy. When I woke up the next morning, I was sleeping in the corner of the room. Beside me sat that older woman, his first wife. Maybe she had begun to feel pity for me. She gently shook my shoulder and brought me back to the bed. One look at me, and she understood exactly what had happened in that room last night. She sighed deeply and said, "Pray that this landlord dies a dog's death. He has destroyed the lives of so many girls." I was his first target. When I raised my voice, when I finally dared to grab him by the collar, he married again. And now that his second wife is no longer satisfying him, God knows where he found you and brought you into this house. This man's hunger never ends. He is starving for women. She was trying to comfort me. And I clung to her like a friend, like a sister. I sobbed uncontrollably in her arms. I told her everything about my past, about my betrayal, my shattered dreams. After listening to me, she said, "Don't worry. I will do everything I can to make sure he never comes near you again. No matter what it takes, I'll stop him." Her name was Rahana, the landlord's first wife. She now felt like my protector in this cruel, unfamiliar house. The second wife, however, couldn't even stand the sight of me. That evening, I sat in the courtyard staring at the plants, lost, empty. A gardener entered quietly, watering the plants. He looked about my age. He kept his head low, watering silently, but I noticed him stealing glances at me from time to time. Seeing me sit there so sad and silent, he slowly walked over and said, "BBG, why do you look so worried?" I looked at him with my dim, tired eyes and said, "After entering the territory of the landlord, how can anyone even think of being happy?" The gardener stayed quiet for a moment. Then suddenly he plucked a red rose and offered it to me. He said, "Look at these flowers, then. Inhale their fragrance. You'll feel refreshed. Have faith in God. What happened to you was wrong. A man like the landlord, you never deserved him. But maybe, just maybe, your fate will soon bring you peace." There was a sparkle in his eyes, but it wasn't the kind of sparkle that suggested any foul intention. From that day on, I would often come sit in the courtyard. While I worked around the house, that gardener would quietly take over my chores, even though I was still legally the landlord's wife, and every night he ravaged me like an animal. My heart had begun to make space for this man. Love was starting to grow inside me for him, and on the other side, Murad too had begun to develop feelings for me. I could feel it. His feelings reached me like a warm, invisible fragrance, and I was becoming madly drawn to him. One evening, I was sitting alone in my room. Murad had brought groceries and left them in the kitchen. Then quietly, he came into my room. The night before, I had been massaging the landlord's legs and dozed off from exhaustion. As punishment, he had pressed a burning cigarette to my cheek. Since morning, I had been crying from the pain. The burning was unbearable. Suddenly, there was a knock, and then Murad slipped into the room, trying not to be seen. Seeing me sitting there, he asked softly, "What happened? Why didn't you come out of your room today?" I exhaled deeply, fighting back tears. Then I said, "How could I? Do you even know what the landlord did to me?" Tears streamed down my face as I pulled back the edge of my shawl, revealing my injured cheek. Murad's eyes widened in horror. He visibly trembled at the sight of the wound. Murad said, "That filthy beast, how dare he? If I had any power, I would have taken you away from this place long ago. That wretched man, how could he even lay a finger on you? tears were streaming down from my eyes. Murad stepped forward, looked at the burn on my cheek, and let out a cold sigh. He gently reached out to place his hand on my wound, and just then, the landlord burst into the room, thumping his crutch furiously against the floor. The moment he saw me and Murad together, he exploded in rage. "You lowly servant! What are you doing in my room? What are you doing so close to my wife? What games are you playing in my absence? Who gave you permission to enter here?" He limped toward us, seething with fury. And in the very next moment, a thunderous slap landed across Murad's face. Murad collapsed onto the floor. Panicking, I shouted, "It's not his fault. He just came in to give me water." I was desperately trying to make up any excuse, anything to protect Murad. I didn't want him to suffer because of me. If he lost his job because of this, how would he feed his family? But before I could say another word, the landlord struck me across the same cheek that already bore the cigarette burn. My head snapped to the side. "Oh, so now in my absence, you've started inviting servants into my room?" he yelled. "You've got that much nerve now, inviting strangers to your room and showing them your wounds on your cheeks?" The fear turned my face ghost pale. But maybe this was the moment fate had chosen. Before the landlord could do anything worse, Murad grabbed a flower vase, and with all his strength, he smashed it into the landlord's head. A spray of blood exploded from his skull. I gasped and stumbled backward in shock. Several steps. If anyone had come into the room just then, what would they have seen? I stared, trembling, at Murad. The landlord's skull had split open. The entire floor was soaked in blood. I looked at Murad in shock and said, "What have you done? You've killed him. Do you have any idea what you've done? He was the landlord of this village. People will kill us for this." But Murad replied firmly, "Winnie, we won't let anyone find out. I'll take you far away from here." I was trembling with panic, completely unable to think straight. That cursed man had tormented so many people. He had crushed the dignity of countless girls. And I knew just a few days from now, once he grew tired of me, he would have done the same to me. Before anyone could enter the room, Murad and I quickly lifted the landlord's body and laid it on the bed. We cleaned up all the blood from the floor and wiped everything down. Then we covered his body with a sheet and walked out of the room, calm and quiet. Before anyone could suspect a thing, we both left the house. Murad had come from another village for this job. After nearly 3 hours of travel, we finally reached his hometown. The whole way, I kept asking him over and over again, "What if someone finds out we killed the landlord? What will happen then?" I was shaking from head to toe, tears rolling down my cheeks. But Murad kept reassuring me, "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. No one can harm us. Even his wives were sick of him. None of them will complain to the police. And we're far enough now, no one will be able to reach us." Those words gave me a little relief. When Murad finally brought me to his home, I met his mother and 2 sisters. He also had an older brother who was unmarried. But the moment they saw me with Murad, the entire house erupted in chaos. Murad's mother seemed like a very emotional woman. She cried out, "I sent you there to earn a few rupees, and you brought back a girl instead? Who is she? Tell me right now." She began pulling at her hair, beating her chest, crying as if her son had brought home a curse instead of a girl. It felt like someone had brought a corpse home, not a girl. Murad tried to calm his mother down, but his elder brother kept glaring at me with suspicion. Murad clearly said, "I brought this girl back after saving her from a horrible fate. She'll stay in this house. As soon as her iddah is complete, I will marry her." At first, it seemed they might even agree to the marriage, but the moment they found out she had to complete iddah, Murad's mother almost fainted in shock. Murad's elder brother scoffed and asked, "Who is this girl? What is this? Did she get a divorce for you?" Murad nervously replied, "No, her husband died." Murad's mother, now full of suspicions, started bombarding us with questions. "So she left her husband's funeral to run away with you? This all sounds like a setup. Something is fishy here. You two are definitely hiding something from us." They kept pressuring Murad to tell them the whole truth, but it was me who could no longer stay silent. Crying, I told them everything. While Murad kept trying to stop me, I confessed it all. After hearing the full truth, his entire family sat down, holding their heads in disbelief. They said, "We don't even dare speak with the big families in our area. Whether it's friendship or enmity, both are dangerous." And you went and killed a landlord from another village? You crossed a line. This girl cannot stay in this house. Take her back wherever she came from. I stood there, terrified, watching as Murad's family pressured him from every side. If he abandoned me now, where would I go? I turned away and started crying silently. But Murad stood beside me. He said firmly, I brought her here of my own will. I will make her my wife. She's already suffered too much. She's an orphaned girl. Now all of you remember one thing. If anyone in this house tries to harm this girl in any way, if you choose oppression over justice, then don't expect God to show any mercy on you either. He had taken me to a separate room, one where his sisters usually stayed. He said, from now on, you'll live here. I sat in a corner, frightened and unsure. Soon, Murad's two sisters entered the room. At first, the three of us just sat there, staring silently at one another. Then one of them gently asked my name and about my parents. In no time, we developed a close friendship. Because I was still in my idda, waiting period, I would stay confined to that room. Murad's sisters would secretly talk to me when their mother wasn't around. Once they learned about my past, they truly felt deep sympathy for me. But whenever Murad's mother entered the room, they would immediately move away from me, as if no one had spoken a word. Time kept moving forward. All my basic needs were being taken care of in that house. Whenever Murad and his elder brother were away, I would help his sisters with house chores. Eventually, news had reached the town that the landlord from the neighboring village had been killed. Bit by bit, the fear in my heart began to fade. But the weight of having taken a life still lived inside me. I often thought about it, and then one day I took a deep breath and told myself, I killed him in self-defense. Otherwise, he would have murdered me with his own hands. Slowly, some peace began to return to my life. The day my idda ended, Murad's mother came to me and said, my son truly loves you. I never imagined I'd marry him off to someone who wasn't a beautiful, young, untouched girl, but this is what fate has chosen. He's fallen for you, and I can see it's real. So I've decided, this Friday, I'm arranging your marriage. She sat beside me, telling me all the customs and traditions of their household. I silently listened to everything she said, nodding in agreement. It felt like happiness was finally returning to my life. That maybe everything would be all right now, that I would live in this house with all of them, in peace and laughter. But little did I know, another storm was waiting just around the corner. It was the day of the wedding. I was dressed as a bride, sitting gracefully, while the house overflowed with guests. Murad and I were both seated before everyone when the Malvi Sahib asked for our acceptance. With a smile on my face, I gave myself to Murad. The moment the congratulations and blessings had just begun, the main door burst open. Police officers began entering the house one after another. Everyone froze. Eyes widened in shock. The lead officer barked, "Who is Murad?" As soon as they spotted us, they rushed forward and grabbed Murad by the collar. Female constables seized me too. One shouted, "So you thought you could get away with murder? You thought the law wouldn't find you?" The arms of justice are long. We won't let you go. We'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget. Disappeared for months? You really thought you could vanish forever? Terrified, I clung tightly to Murad's hand. But then, a burly lady constable slapped me hard across the face. Slap! She sneered, "Shameless. You murdered your husband and now you're marrying your lover? Girls like you should be made an example of, publicly humiliated." Whispers turned into loud murmurs. The truth had exploded in front of everyone. People now knew the full story, that Murad and I had killed someone, that I was not a virgin but a previously married woman. Everyone began whispering, judging, spitting silent curses in their hearts. When they finally dragged me away, Murad's mother collapsed on the floor. She had suffered a heart attack. In that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Crying, I began to think, maybe I really am cursed. Maybe it's my misfortune that's ruining Murad's life too. Right then and there, I made a decision. Through my tears, I looked at the police officers and said, Murad is innocent. He didn't do anything. I'm the one who killed the landlord. Arrest me, but leave Murad out of this. Murad was standing near his unconscious mother. When I took the blame on myself, the lead officer immediately ordered his team to put me in the van. They seated me in the back and began driving toward the station. They could always question Murad later. And me? I was now in jail. That's when a new officer arrived, a 35-year-old handsome SHO named Arbaz Khan, assigned to investigate the landlord's murder. When SHO Arbaz saw me, his expression filled with surprise and disbelief. Something about his reaction made me even more nervous. I sat in one corner of the lockup, sobbing uncontrollably. He walked over to me and said, "You look so innocent. And yet what a shameless woman you are. You killed your husband for a servant? Do you even realize you could be hanged for this? Or spend your entire life behind bars? What did you think? That you'd just run away and no one would find you?" I sat silently, staring at him, my chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. He kept taunting me, doing everything he could to emotionally break me, until finally, I snapped. I let it all out. I told him everything. How my brother-in-law and that landlord sold me like an object. How I was thrown into a predator's arms. And how, if I hadn't killed that beast, I wouldn't have survived. As I spoke, Sho Arbaz's face slowly changed. And then, a smile spread across his lips. He said quietly, This is exactly what I wanted to hear. I knew it the moment I saw you that something had definitely happened to you." He said, "That's why you were pushed to such an extreme. Anyway, don't worry. I had already received multiple complaints against that landlord, but we were pressured by our seniors. He was a powerful man. Stay here for a few days. After that, I'll make sure you're freed from all this." I began to thank him. At least someone had finally understood my helplessness. Soon, Murad had also arrived at the police station. The SHO spoke to him in detail. Murad didn't leave the station until I was officially released. Just a few days later, SHO Arbaz closed the case. The villagers were also relieved. They were free from the tyrant landlord. However, Kashif Bhai was kept in jail for 2 months to knock some sense into him. Our entire neighborhood had heard about the scandal. There was a lot of shame. Once again, my mother-in-law's behavior turned cold toward me. But slowly, things started to heal. Bit by bit, everything settled. And finally, happiness returned to my life. I began to live a peaceful, dignified life with Murad.